Welcome to Unleashed at Work and Home. I'm Colleen Pilar, and this is where pet professionals come for honest conversations about what it really takes to show up for yourself while serving the animals you love. If you've ever felt caught between compassion and exhaustion, you're in the right place. Here we explore what it means to reconnect with your inner wisdom and rediscover the joy that brought you to this work. Make sure to join my email community at colleenpilar.com for gentle, practical insights designed specifically for pet professionals. Now, let's dive in. Welcome back to Unleashed at Work and Home. My guest today is Dr. Karen London, who is a certified animal behaviorist specializing in dog behavior challenges. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to talking with you more.
I'm happy to have you here. I had Tricia McConnell on recently, and I always associate your name with hers because when I first encountered your work, it was in some of the work that you two did together. So can you tell us a little bit about the work you do now?
Well, first of all, let me say I'm thrilled to be associated with Tricia McConnell. She is my mentor, my colleague, and my friend. So that's a happy pairing from my end. Right now, I work as a certified applied animal behaviorist. I work mostly with dogs with serious behavior problems, including aggression, but I do a variety of training as well. Sometimes it's just a dog that's very, very busy, a working dog in a suburban situation and looking for things to deal with that. And then I do a lot of writing, and I occasionally teach at my local university, Northern Arizona University. But the teaching that I do there is actually not dog related. I teach in ecology and behavior and related to my insect work, which is what I studied insect behavior and social wasps in graduate school. So I do teach things related to insects.
Oh, how interesting. How interesting. I didn't know that. Did not
Surprise!
Know that. That's really cool. So one of my very favorite questions to ask everybody is, when you were 10, what did you think you were going to do? When people would ask you, what are you going to be when you grow up? What was your answer?
I had a lot of uncertainty even then, but the one constant theme is that I always knew I wanted to work with animals. So I didn't have necessarily a specific animal in mind, although I always loved dogs. I loved cats. My favorite animal at that time was the gray whale, and I was very interested in going into marine biology. I lived, within sight of the ocean in Los Angeles. But I love to just wade around in creeks in Southern California and collect frogs, and was interested in birds and I just really knew I wanted to work with animals, but it was a very vague plan. I knew I didn't want to go into the medical side, so I knew I wasn't going to be a veterinarian. That wasn't where my passions were, but just animals, animals, animals of all types.
Can you then take us, sort of the plot points of like from that kid, then you went off to college, and what did you major in, and how did it turn out? Take us down the path of how you wound up here.
Well, I went to UCLA and I majored in biology. My specialty, or my sort of concentration, was ecology, behavior, and evolution. And when I was a sophomore, I went on a field quarter to Costa Rica, and I became really interested in termites because the professor that took us on our introductory tour, his name was Michael Greenfield, really great professor. He turned over this log or rock and he ran his finger across this termite trail, and all of a sudden the termite stopped being able to follow the trail because it's a chemical trail, and when he rubbed his finger across, it was all chaos. And I became interested in that, so I decided I wanted to work with social insects. There's so many interesting things about them, about their defense and their social organization and their reproductive division of labor. And so I ended up studying social wasps. My master's degree was about a nesting association between two species of wasps that live together in many areas in Costa Rica, but not in Mexico. And I studied them in both places. And then my PhD was the defensive behavior of tropical social wasps. And I studied a bit about how wasps learn to detect the scent of ants and whether they have innate ability to detect the scent of ants that don't even live in their area. A very destructive ones, army ants, and what kind of parasitoids they had, and just how aggressively they defend their nest depending on where they are in the colony cycle. Like they're more defensive when their brood is closer to reaching adulthood. They have more value at that point. So I
Hmm.
was interested in that. And then I was in graduate school at the University of Wisconsin, and there was a big TA snafu where I think someone broke an arm or a leg and they were supposed to TA ornithology. So the person that was supposed to TA another class moved into the ornithology TA. And I ended up, because I had one philosophy class on my undergraduate uh, transcript, end up TAing for Patricia McConnell's class, the biology and philosophy of human animal relationships. And that's how I ended up meeting Tricia McConnell. And I was like, wow, I'm really interested in defensive behavior, which is much like aggressive behavior in dogs,
Hmm.
and species interactions. That's what my master's had been about. And so I started just volunteering in her dog training classes. And, the next thing I know, I'm working full time for her. When she wrote The Other End of the Leash, she hired me to take on her aggression cases. So I originally planned to go into academics, working with social insects, and now I am in clinical practice working with behavior of dogs, as could happen to anyone.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's totally normal. Everybody studying wasps would expect that, an easy side adjunct is dogs. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Same old yawn snooze, the same old story.
Yeah. And vice versa. Like, ask me anything about wasps because I definitely know, of course. I'm not even sure I can identify one. I mean, quite sincerely, like, is that a wasp or is it a bee or is it some other? Okay, I don't know.
Well, they are fairly closely related, so you're good.
That's good. I'm phenomenally ignorant about pretty much all species other than humans and dogs. Like, just amazingly so. And so far that's worked for me, but it is really interesting to me that I meet so many people who have had a passion for another species, and I
Mm.
sometimes don't even have a picture in my head of what that might be. It's really, really cool. So you are making me think about, like, the social behavior pieces. You've written a book called Treat Everyone Like a Dog, and I have to tell you that for years as a dog trainer, one of my jokes was, like, everything in life relates to dog training, like, everything relates, um, because it is the social behavior piece that is so often the part that really matters. I'm curious, can you tell us a little bit about that book and why you chose that title?
Sure. And I totally agree with you. It's just everything does relate to dog training. I feel like as I go through my day, whether I'm in the work part of my day or the social part of my day or my family or, just dealing with everything, like I'm a dog trainer all day, every day, and that's how I view the world. And I think that as a social species, humans, were very interested in influencing behavior. And that's what dog trainers know how to do. We know how to influence behavior, whether that
Mhm,
is teaching dogs to do what we want them to do when we want them to do it, like, sit, heel, and come,
mhm.
or whether we want them not to do things either ever or at least not now, jumping up, digging, biting. And so I have thought for years about the way that I apply what I know from dog training, positive reinforcement, classical conditioning, shaping, how, health factors can influence behavior, um, learning one thing at a time, working on one aspect of training at a time, back chaining, all these things, asking the question, what would success look like? All these things that apply, learning things myself, teaching things to others. And I just started keeping a lot of anecdotes about it for the better part of 7 years. I just kept kind of writing these things down, and I used to joke that I thought about writing a book, sort of something about, like, the magic of dog training, but I jokingly called it my Treat Everyone Like a Dog book, and I
Mhm.
said to myself, like, I could never really call it that.
Of course not.
Um, no, that'd be crazy. I mean, who would do such a thing? And then the pandemic hit, and I had some time on my hands, and that's when I actually wrote the book. I mean, I'd been working on it, but it was who knows when it ever would have been finished. But I had a good 6 months before I started seeing clients by Zoom, and so I did have more time on my hands, and I was sure home a lot, and so I wrote it, and eventually I just decided, you know what? It's always been called Treat Everyone Like a Dog, and the way I think, and so that's what I called it, and the way I think of the book, it is what I do, and it's got a lot of stories and examples from my life, but it's a very personal book to me. I've written a lot of books, but this one's the most personal because it really is who I am.
Mhm.
It's and the way I like to describe the book is that it's my love letter to dog trainers and an instruction manual for everyone else. That's sort of my elevator pitch on it.
Oh, I love that. My love letter to dog trainers and an instruction manual for everyone else.
Yes, and I at one point was thinking of a subtitle of harnessing the skill set of dog trainers to influence the behavior of people, which probably would have been a good subtitle, but I didn't go with it. I ended up going with, how a dog trainer's worldview can improve your life because I really think it's true. I think what dog trainers know is really good stuff, and we should share it with everyone. It helps with relationships. It helps minimize frustration. And I just really like the way so many dog trainers, me included, are we're so patient with dogs. And because
Mhm.
we're like, if a dog doesn't do something that we want them to do, we tend not to get really upset. We're like, well, okay, well, they're not really prepared to do that in this environment, or how can I help them? Or, well, what can I do to make this differently? Or, maybe today's training session is just a wash and we need to start over tomorrow. But with people, it tends to be so emotionally laden, like, why aren't you doing what I'm asking you
Yeah.
to? And maybe they have a different agenda and maybe they just really haven't been taught or trained. And I think that um, acting like a dog trainer in my interactions with people uh, allows me to be my best self in a lot of interactions, not just with dogs, because I do think my best self, like my best me, is the dog trainer in me.
Yeah.
So that's what I really like about having written this book and sharing the ideas with people. And I think it really resonates with a lot of dog trainers because so many dog trainers are like, oh, I do that, or I use positive reinforcement, or I do this. It's not an idea that comes like a whack on the head to people. It's more like, ah, yes.
It is really interesting how so many dog trainers don't realize that the skill set applies beyond so very well because it really really does. And in all of my training for, the coaching and the psychology pieces of the work I do now, I was amazed that I was often one of the best read students in the class because I had already read this book or that book or whatever, because it was looking at how I could help my clients do better and how I could do there was a lot of human psychology baked into just the world I lived in as a dog trainer, and vice versa. And it does kind of all kind of come back to looking at behavior and being curious about it and analyzing it. And I always hesitated to talk about it that way because there is this little bit of element of are you treating me like a dog, Like treat everyone like a dog is a great title when we can laugh about it, but it was a fear because one of my specialties when I was training was kids and dogs. And I very much saw parenting and dog training or dog behavior as very similar, not identical. I get it. I have kids, I've had dogs. I know they're not the same. And also, it's a lot the same in your stance and how you're going to be and how that. So it was always this little tricky spot of are you saying like a dog? Are you treating me like a dog? And I'm like, what higher compliment could I give someone? I adore dogs. I treat them so very well.
I agree with you 100%. I think that everybody does deserve to be treated like a dog. And by that, I mean the way the best, positive, humane dog trainers treat their dogs.
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody doesn't agree with the statement, I would argue that they're not really understanding where we're coming from with it. But I mean, I have two kids, they're now in college, and I did a lot of things with them that related to the way I raise dogs. And I am really pleased with the young men they have become. And I
Hmm.
think that they are much the better for having been raised uh, with a dog training perspective and understanding that I think served them well.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely think so. So I ask all of my guests to share some words that have meaning for them. And you shared a quote from Dr. Seuss. It's fun to have fun, but you have to know how. I'm just going to stereotype just broadly here. When we think of people who've pursued something to the level of a PhD, we don't tend to think of fun as being their first motivating force. Tell me a little bit about this quote and how it came into your experience of being something that you want to hold on to.
Well, I think that a lot of people who are scientists, and I would put myself in this category, who consider the work of science as a very playful, creative pursuit.
Mm.
It's the way that we might think of engineers when they were children, that they were tinkerers. I think many scientists as children were extremely playful, not necessarily super attached to doing things in a linear manner or the way everyone else has done it. So I think that's one aspect of it. I think that um, play is so important in for dogs. It matters to me because it matters to dogs. And because I'm an aggression specialist, play comes up a lot. Play and aggression are really closely linked. There's emotional levels of frustration and arousal that affect both. Play can be used to treat aggression a lot. That's something I've spoken about quite a lot and I feel very strongly about. I think that sometimes I meet with people and they say their dogs kind of have no training, but they're they're um they're undervaluing the work they've put in teaching their dogs to play, being able to, retrieve, to drop, to go get a toy on cue. All of these are skills. And I think that a lot of behavior problems in dogs come from a lack of skills. The dogs don't have the skills they need, and that can be related to their just emotional health and temperament and experience. But I think that play is so often a cause of problems or can lead to problems, and it's because dogs don't quite know how to play. And the reason that that from the cat in the hat, it's fun to have fun, but you have to know how means so much to me is because that philosophy has helped me help a lot of people and their dogs. And also because play seems so intuitive and so obvious, but you need to know the
Mhm.
rules. I mean, if you're playing
Mhm.
cricket or you're curling or you're, you know, playing tag, you need to know the rules. And I think that it's a reminder that no matter what you're doing, you need to know how to do it. And some analogy I would think of are that many people who go to either medical or dental school, for example, they learn how to practice medicine and how to practice dentistry, but they don't know about having a business. And I think it's just a reminder that no matter what you're doing, there are things that you need to know. And I think that play is something that is so often taken as just intuitive or natural or just like, oh, anyone can do it. But just like everything else, it's a skill and you need to know. You need to know the rules, the boundaries, the techniques, and so many things. So I love that. And I just think that the people I like the best are the people who are the most playful. And so it all just sort of, to quote, when I saw that question on your intake, that's just the first thing that occurred to me that I just think about all the time and that I place value in. In a way, it's a little bit unfortunate. It's from Dr. Seuss because he is not always taken seriously, but I certainly think he should be.
Mhm. I love it. Um, I think both pieces of it are really valuable here for this conversation, and particularly for this group of people. It is fun to have fun, but you have to know how. Um, I know a lot of pet professionals who struggle with being able to have fun with it for themselves. You know, they can do it in the context of setting up fun things for others, fun things for animals, fun things for friends. But there's a little bit of a permission giving of like, am I allowed to have fun? Because I'm serious and I have a lot of work to do and there are important things that need to be done. And this is wasteful and self-indulgent if I go do something fun. So not only do they not always feel permission to have fun, but when they take time to have fun, they sometimes don't know how. Like,
I
I
agree.
have had people say, like, "Oh, I took the afternoon off, and it was really kind of boring and stressful because I didn't know what to do."
Yeah, I think people can get out of practice with that. And I think this idea of permission that you bring up is so relevant to people in any kind of you know pet professional because it's a very weighty field with a lot of work that needs doing to help and save animals, and that can weigh heavily on all of us. But when I think about permission, that is what I think of. I don't know if this connection will resonate with you, but so I live in the mountains at 7,000 feet in Flagstaff, Arizona, and we typically over the years have averaged 100 inches of snow a year. I'm not sure what we're at this year, but it is way low. There is climate change, and we are so low on snow. And I mean, it's really warm out, and people are sort of upset about it. And I know it's terrible, but also I love being out in the nice warmth in January and February and December when it's often cold. And I know that it's terrible, but it can either be terrible or I can be upset about it, or can be terrible and I enjoy it. I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. So I think the same thing is true. It's like just because you're enjoying yourself or doing something strictly for recreational purposes doesn't mean that you don't still value the important work that you're doing in your professional life.
Yeah.
A bit of a stretch of an analogy, but it's where my mind went.
Yeah, which is I mean, that's what we do here. We let our minds wander a bit and see what connects. And I do think that that's important. Important is a word that my brain goes to too often, and it's not quite where I want in this moment, but there's this idea of that the work people are doing is important and worthy of care, and taking the time to have positive experiences matters. And it matters not only just for your health and your well-being, but even for the work. Now, I don't think you should take a break so you can do better work. There is that argument, like, but I don't want people to have their I don't their identity and their worth so tied up into it that, like, I'm going to go have fun so that I can be an even better dog trainer. But the reality is you will be. Um, but you could also go have fun so that you could just be a person who has fun. That'd be nice. And don't you think that the whole world could use a few more people who are just kind of like happy and joyful and having fun? There are big problems, but happy, joyful people might come up with better solutions than cranky, stressed out people right
Right. I
now.
mean, I've said for years when I was doing things with my kids, like even when they were little and I needed to nurse them, if they woke up in the middle of the night and cried, first I went to the bathroom, then I got a glass of water, and meanwhile the baby's crying. But I was always like, I have to take care of me so I can take care of you, or go for a run or
Mhm.
whatever. And now people tend to say, put on your own oxygen mask first. But it's the same thing. And I think that um, I just I don't know, we only get one life. I don't think there's anything wrong with enjoying as much of it as you can, and it doesn't mean that I don't take the problems of the world seriously, but I'm honestly not thinking about them every minute of every day, nor do I think I should be. And there's so many people in our field, and we're working so hard to do so much for animals, and I think it's always wise to keep in mind that when we're just doing whatever we wanna do for fun or joy or recreationally, there's someone else working, and it's not that we're putting the work off on them, but I'm really big in running and track and field, and sometimes people say like, "Oh, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon," and I say, "No, it's not it's a relay," right? You gotta hand the baton off
Mhm.
all the time. You'll get it again, but, you're always handing it off, and I just don't, um, feel like guilt or shame about enjoying my life. I do think I'm a contributing member of society, but I just have no um, emotional challenge related to feeling like I could be doing more, although it's certainly true I could be doing more. That just isn't something that I put on myself on the regular.
I kinda love the metaphor of the relay. I mean, I've definitely heard it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, um, and I like the long view of that, but I also really do think that the relay piece is important because it isn't all on any of us, any of this, and it's so easy to lose sight of that. It's so easy to feel like it all comes down to how much effort we ourselves are putting in, that there are things happening that we don't know about, and things that we can't see, and things that we do know about and that we can see, that are also making a difference. So the relay concept is kind of cool because you do need to stop, get your breath, let someone else run for a bit, and then you can have another turn in the relay if when it's your turn to run again. I like that.
I'm glad.
So since we're here on fun, tell me what you do for fun.
I well, I live in an outdoor area, so I like running, hiking, biking, some skiing. I haven't done any this year yet. And I like racing, any kind of distance. I've raced everything from the 60 meters to the marathon, and currently I'm focusing a lot on the triple jump in track and field, which used to be known as the hop, skip, and the jump. But it's just like the long jump in the sense that you run and jump into the sand.
Wow. Wow. What got you into that?
My son was a triple jumper in high school, and he taught me how to triple jump, and we had a good laugh because we looked. My husband was also trying the triple jump, and he did so well. He was like a foot off the state record in Arizona for his age class. And so when we looked up, I was like, "Well, let's look up what it is in my age class," and there was no mark. I was 54 at that time, I'm now 57, and there was mark in the age group 50 to 54. So my son taught me how to triple jump enough, and I now have the state record in Arizona in those age classes for the triple jump. And by that I mean apparently I'm the only one who's ever registered a mark in my age class. So it's a and now I do it for fun. Originally I did it to just get the state record because I thought it would be hilarious. Um, so and then I've done some long jumping since then and some sprinting, but it's just, I don't know, it's just I feel really strongly that it's super important to if you're teaching, as we often are in dog training, we're all teachers, whether you're teaching group classes or individual
Mhm.
skills or whatever. Mary Lee Nitschke, who has since passed away, but she was a psychologist and dog trainer. When she had a dog training facility, she required all of her trainers to take a class to learn something new every 9 months. And she didn't care if it was calligraphy or macrame or, it could be triple jumping. But the experience of basically not knowing what you know how to do and having a teacher, it keeps you in that area of like what you need to learn at the very basics. It
Yeah.
also helps you identify, like, my son taught me to triple jump, he did a really good job, I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up doing he does some coaching of kids now, but even in college, but I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up really going into coaching. He was terrific, and he understands me, knowing your learner's important with dogs, people, everything.
Mhm.
The person who first taught me to snowboard, which I forget, I learned to ski when I was, like, 35 or 36 when I moved to Flagstaff, and I learned to snowboard sometime after that. And, I mean, my snowboarding instructor kinda said things like, "Become one with the hill, and, you gotta shred it." It's like, okay, that really doesn't tell me how to get off the lift without falling and having it whack me on the head. He was, I guess the most charitable way to say it is that he was not a good instructor for me, but I think it's also fair to say he just really wasn't that good an instructor for at least for beginners. And that was useful. Like, what's he saying? He wasn't giving any real information.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and it's very different to be an instructor for a beginner than an instructor for an advanced person, because the advanced person has a whole framework of knowledge that you could just add your, be one with the hill piece to, and that might mean something to them. But for a beginner, you have to really do that. I do agree that there's such value in taking a course and being a beginner, and it's hard. It's uncomfortable sometimes. It can be really cool, like, you sign up for something like, "Oh, this is gonna be interesting and fun." And also, you know, to use the calligraphy example, when your ink keeps globbing on the paper and you're asking how not to do it, they're probably using words that don't mean something to you. Like, just the language, the jargon, the technique doesn't actually translate into, "What do I do?" Me right now in this moment. Hmm. So yes, being the person who can see where another instructor does or doesn't do well, and in both ways, you'll learn something helpful for your own teaching to other humans.
I
Um,
totally agree. And for me, I think the biggest thing that I just keep learning over and over and over again as I learn new things is that jargon is really not helpful. I mean, I come from an academic background. I've been dog training since 1997. I certainly am familiar with many of the academic terminology. And if I'm discussing with colleagues, I'm certainly comfortable using those terms, but I really just, unless I happen to have a client who is a psychologist, or they
mhm.
somehow these words would be useful to them, I really don't bother. I just am very I think I very actively minimize jargon. I guess except when I don't realize I'm using it. I'm sure that happens to everyone, but it's a general goal. And I find that as a beginner, I don't really care a lot what you call things because I'm not trying to distinguish them from other closely related things at that moment.
Right, right. Yeah. I have found that the more comfortable somebody is with what they're teaching, I don't know if this is true across the board, so I wanna be careful about a blanket statement, but I'll go from the narrower perspective. I have known people who were a little bit less comfortable, who would rely on the jargon kind of as a credibility builder, like, "No, see, I know my stuff." Um, and and that was well intended because they did know their stuff. They did. But they weren't as comfortable yet to kind of dance in the moment in sharing the information. But jargon can really be so alienating for those of us who don't really understand it. I'm actually taking a cartooning class right now, and they were talking about hue and tone and saturation of color, and I almost fell over. I'm like, I don't know that I can articulate the differences between those. And then the teacher came back and was like, you don't actually need to, like just start with light and dark. And then we'll work on warm and cold. And that might be enough. That might just be fine. But when the terms of, hue, saturation, and I don't even remember what the third one was I just said in there, but
Maybe.
it becomes one of those things where it is interesting to those of us who are professional in any field, like whatever that term means. There is a distinction. It's important. We have the nuance. But to the person we're teaching, usually at the beginning, it doesn't. It doesn't have the same value. And so letting ourselves use it in a way that communicates to the learner is more helpful. Like how will they understand this? And metaphor is a great way for doing that. So even like your relay example is a really nice way for somebody to get an idea without having to, use the jargon for all of the concepts. So I like to ask people, if you had a magic wand and you could grant one wish or a blessing for pet professionals as a population, what would you give us?
Well, first of all, how do you know I don't have a magic wand? But no,
Hmm.
if I had a magic wand and I had one wish, I would like for the guilt to go away. People feel very guilty about the dogs they couldn't save, or other animals too. I tend to think of
Mhm.
dogs, or what they didn't get right, or what they wish they had said. And I love to give people the grace of, if people are legitimately doing the best they can, I would not like to see so much guilt. And many people that I come into contact with who are pet professionals, especially with dogs, they themselves got into it because they had a dog with aggression. And there's so
Mhm.
much guilt and shame associated with having an aggressive dog.
Mhm.
And I would just like to toss all that guilt and shame away. That would be my terrific wish.
That would be lovely. That would be lovely.
I think so.
We'll take it. Thank you. Okay, so if people wanted to learn more about you and your work, how could they do that?
Well, I am on Instagram. It's Karen London Dog Behavior. But I think the best way to learn about my work, because I tell a lot of stories in my books, is to read about my books. And the two most recent ones that are about dogs are the Treat Everyone Like a Dog, which we already mentioned, and then another one that's a collection of newspaper columns. It's called My Dog's Mystery Adventure, and it's 50 columns about dogs. I write the London Zoo column for the Arizona Daily Sun, which I need to say has nothing to do with the actual London Zoo in Great Britain, but is my name and my interest in animals. And I've been doing it since 2008, and I wrote a book of about 150, I think it was 145 columns from the first 7 years of doing that. And that book's called Cows, Ants, Termites, and Me. And that is about all kinds of animals. Um, but the dog columns I pulled out separately. And just as sort of a fun side note, I'd love to mention that my editor is Eileen Anderson of Eileen and
Mhm.
Dogs, who's written Remember Me and Puppy Socialization. And she made it a better book. She made them all better, all three of those books, better books. And I appreciate it.
Yes, she's lovely, and, I have interviewed her on this show as well, so I'll link to her episode in the show notes as well. So in
Excellent.
the show notes, I'll put in all your books and Eileen's episode and all of
Great.
that. Well, this has been such a pleasure talking with you today, Karen. It's been really nice.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much for having me. It really is a pleasure to talk with you and just really a treat.
Thank you. So I stopped recording and then we kept talking and oh my gosh, wouldn't you know, she'd be brilliant again. So I turned the microphone back on and Karen and I were talking about a really important idea about compassion fatigue and she shared it and I said, "Can we just put this back on tape?" So, could you please say again what you just shared with me about what you think is really important for people to remember when they're experiencing some of these symptoms?
Sure, I would love to. I think that one of the best ways to handle compassion fatigue is both sort of preventative and proactive, and that's to
Mhm.
have some other aspect of your career beyond the part that really sort of draws from you emotionally. So I work a lot with people with aggressive dogs, and that, as you can imagine, can be very emotional and very draining. And I love it. I absolutely adore it. But I have to keep feeding my emotional energy to continue to be able to do that. And what I do is I have other things that I do. So in the past, I've taught, puppy classes and tricks and games classes and other group classes. I I speak to, conferences and local groups, and then I write. So not all of my work week or work life is working with aggression cases. I have something else. So for many people, if you are working in a shelter, which can be incredibly draining, or in a veterinary clinic, or in so many other areas, if there's some other thing you do that's career related, whether it's writing or even to help you learn more about dogs, doing dog sports or something sort of more recreational with your pets, or if you're with horses, to ride just be on the trail for fun, just some other aspect of career. It could be teaching, horseback riding lessons, that you have some other avenue related to your field that doesn't drain from you quite so much. I think that's super important.
It really is. It really is. And it's particularly challenging um, when you are the one they turn to for the hard stuff, that it can feel like you should leave some of the lighter or easier stuff for other people because they can do it. And and you should do all the hard stuff, but to to see the balance and to have that ability to refuel is so important. And you offered such a lovely variety of ways that somebody might fill their cup because you don't always get it, like, right in your workplace. So you said, like, if you're that your writing, feeds a piece of you. So if you were working in a veterinary clinic, you're probably not gonna be writing about that on the job, but you can write about it in other times of your day or other ways of doing that. And it can be a way of kind of reconnecting you to what brings you to the work and also a little bit more of the joy of it. I think that's really valuable. So I wanted to pop us back on here so that you could hear that because I absolutely agree with Karen that um, your skills matter and your energy matters and your experience matters. And so finding ways to keep yourself fueled matters. Is there anything else you'd like to tag on to that
Well,
before
just
we?
that no matter how draining various aspects of work, in the like animal professional space can be, I think it's important too that you do what you really love. So I really love working with families, even if they're in crisis with aggression cases. I mean, even though I do have to take care of myself, but I really do love it. I love wading into those big emotions and big problems and being a part of just, I kind of think I just want to make their journey a little bit easier in whatever way that helps. And there are plenty of people I think who are doing the job they truly love, but sometimes I think people maybe aren't doing the piece of it they really love. So I think it's really worth evaluating, do you really love it? So for example, I've done a little bit of shelter work and I enjoy doing a little bit of shelter work, but I know if I did a lot of that, that wouldn't be a good match for me. And that has nothing to do with my value or the value of shelter work. It's just a matter of whether
Mhm.
it's a match, and it doesn't happen to be. But I really like the work that I do, and I think that minimizes the compassion fatigue I have because even when it's draining me, it is still fueling me in some sense. But if that's what I did all day, every day, I don't think that would be sustainable for me personally.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's our conversation for today. If something we talked about resonated, I invite you to sit with it. Notice what feels true and what you want to explore further. You don't have to have it all figured out to start moving toward what matters. Whatever showed up for you today, clarity, questions, even resistance, trust that it's pointing you towards something important. For more support, join my weekly notes at colleenpilar.com. And until next time, remember, you are enough, always, just as you are.